Hello, and thank you for joining us for this Washington State Employee Assistance Program's Assertiveness and Self-Confidence webinar, a proud member of the Department of Enterprise Services. I am your host, Matthew Gilbert, licensed marriage and family therapist and nationally certified employee assistance professional. Okay, so let's get started. Assertiveness and self-confidence are comprised of important interpersonal communication skills and traits that can be learned and practiced. This webinar will provide you with many tips, techniques, and opportunities to try out some new skills. Let's take a closer look at some of our webinar objectives. We're going to look at defining assertiveness and self-confidence and list the 4 styles of communication. Describe the types of negative thinking and how one can overcome negative thoughts. Explain the difference between listening and hearing, and understand the importance of body language and questioning skills in communication. Define the importance of goal setting and practice setting what are called SMART goals for assertive behavior. Also, we're going to learn to utilize a few methodologies for understanding your worth and the use of positive self-talk. We're going to look at listing some reasons why a pleasant appearance and even body language are critical for creating a strong first impression. Practice sending positive communications phrased as I messages. And we're going to look at displaying rapport building skills through assertive methods of expressing disagreement and consensus building techniques. And then finally, we're going to look at practicing some strategies for gaining some positive outcomes in difficult interpersonal situations. So what does self-confidence mean to you? Well, self-confidence plays an important role in our everyday lives. Being confident allows us to set and reach our personal goals. It provides stability when we're faced with a challenge. It gives us that push that helps us overcome difficulties. Self-confidence is necessary in our personal and professional lives, as without it, one would not be successful in either. It gives us the ability to stand up to face our challenges and to not pick ourselves apart when we fail. What is assertiveness? An assertive person is confident and direct in dealing with others. Assertive communications promote fairness and equality in human interactions based on a positive sense of respect for self and others. It is the direct communication of a person's needs, wants, and opinions without punishing, threatening, or putting down another person. Assertive behavior includes the ability to stand up for a person's legitimate rights without violating the rights of others or being overly fearful in the process. A skill that can be learned, assertive behavior is situationally specific, meaning different types of assertive behavior can be used in different situations. Assertive behavior involves 3 categories of skills: self-affirmation, expressing positive feelings, and expressing negative feelings. Let's take a closer look at each of these throughout the webinar. But first, let's take a look at what is self-confidence. Self-confidence is a belief in oneself, in one's abilities, or in one's judgment. It is freedom from doubt. When you believe you can change things or make a difference in a situation, you're much more likely to succeed. As a self-confident person, you walk with a bounce in your step. You can control your thoughts and emotions and influence others. You are more prepared to tackle everyday challenges and recover from setbacks. This all leads to a greater degree of optimism and overall life satisfaction. There are 4 styles of communication. They are passive, aggressive, passive-aggressive, and assertive. Passive communication is a style in which individuals have developed a pattern of avoiding expressing their opinions or feelings, protecting their rights, and identifying and meeting their needs. As a result, passive individuals do not respond overtly to hurtful or anger-inducing situations. Instead, they allow grievances or annoyances to mount, usually unaware of the buildup that's occurring within. But once they have reached their high tolerance threshold for unacceptable behavior, they are prone to explosive outbursts, which are usually out of proportion to the triggering event. After the outburst, however, passive communicators can and do often feel shame, guilt, and confusion, so they return to being passive. Aggressive communication is a style in which individuals express their feelings and opinions and advocate for their needs in a way that violates the rights of others. Thus, aggressive communicators are verbally and/or sometimes even physically abusive. Passive-aggressive communication is a style in which individuals appear passive on the surface but are really acting out anger in a subtle, indirect, or behind-the-scenes sort of way. People who develop a pattern of passive-aggressive communication usually feel powerless, stuck, and resentful. In other words, they feel incapable of dealing directly with the object of their resentments. Instead, they express their anger by subtly undermining the object, real or imagined, of their resentments. Assertive communication is a style in which individuals clearly state their opinions and feelings, and firmly advocate for their rights and needs without violating the rights of others. These individuals value themselves, their time, and their emotional, spiritual, and physical needs, and are strong advocates for themselves while being very respectful to the rights of others. Assertiveness allows us to take care of ourselves and is a fundamental for good mental health and healthy relationships. Dr. Viktor Frankl once said, who wrote the book Man's Search for Meaning, "You can take away everything I possess except one thing, my freedom to choose how I will respond to any given situation." Obstacles are encountered every day of our lives, but what we do and how we choose to react during these events will determine the outcomes of such events. Our reaction or response to these obstacles will determine if the situation becomes a minor annoyance or a major event. Overreacting to a small annoyance can easily magnify the issue and make matters larger than it actually is. These are the types of reactions that really should be kept in check, so let's take a closer look at how we might go about doing that. Types of negative thinking. For example, overgeneralization, polarized thinking, self-blame, personalization, and emotional reasoning. Emotional reasoning is when you feel a certain way, and perhaps you feel very strongly about it, and therefore what you're experiencing or thinking must be true as a result of what you're feeling. Negative or counterproductive thinking is essentially the process of filtering and organizing experiences through the lens of negativity. In fact, Dr. David Burns, the author of the Feeling Good Handbook, refers to this way of thinking as distorted or twisted thoughts. Positive or productive thinking requires effort, while negative thinking is often uninvited and happens easily if we're not practicing mindfulness. Negative thinking can contribute to things like depression, anxiety, or as I refer to it, symptom stress, because I'm feeling anxious about feeling depressed, or I'm depressed about feeling anxious. Negative workplace outcomes, and a host of other concerns. Strong communication skills are essential for assertive interaction with others. We are social beings, and the way we communicate is a very important part of our daily lives. Good communication skills are key to success in life, work, and relationships. Without effective communication, a message can easily turn into an error, a misunderstanding, frustration, or even a disaster by being misinterpreted or if poorly delivered. Listening and hearing, well, they're just not the same thing. Listening is something that one consciously chooses to do. Listening requires concentration so that the brain processes meaning from the words and sentences. Listening leads to learning, but this is not always an easy task. The normal adult rate of speech is approximately 150 to 200 words per minute, but the brain can think at a much higher rate of, say, 400 to 600 words per minute, leaving extra time for daydreaming or anticipating the speaker's next words. As opposed to hearing, listening skills can be learned and refined. The art of active listening allows you to fully receive a message from another person, especially in a situation involving anger or perhaps a tense exchange. Active listening allows you to be sensitive to the multiple dimensions of communication that make up the entire message. And these dimensions include things like the occasion for the message, rather. In other words, what is the reason why the person is communicating with me right now in this moment? Another example would be the length of the message. What can the length of the message tell me about its importance? Or the words chosen. Is the message being made formally, or is it with some degree of aloofness or slang? The volume and pace. What clues do the loudness and speed provide me? The pauses and hesitations. How do these enhance or detract from the overall message? And, of course, nonverbal cues. What does eye contact, posture, or facial expressions tell me about the message? Empathy is the capability to share and understand another's emotions and feelings. Empathetic listening is the art of seeking a truer understanding of how others are feeling. This requires excellent discernment and close attention to the nuances of emotional signals. According to Stephen Covey and the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, empathetic listening involves 5 basic tasks. Repeat verbatim the content of the communication, the words, and not the feelings. Rephrase the content. In other words, summarize the meaning of the words in your own words. Reflect feelings. Look more deeply and begin to capture feelings in your own words. Look beyond words for body language and tone to also indicate feelings. And 4, rephrase the content and reflect feelings. Express both their words and feelings in your words. And finally, discern when empathy is not necessary or in some cases even appropriate. Active listeners use specific question techniques to elicit more information from speakers. So let's take a closer look at 3 forms of questions to use when practicing active listening skills. Open questions stimulate thinking and discussion or responses including opinions or feelings. Essentially, they pass control of the conversation over to the respondent. Leading words in open questions include things like why, what, or how. Here is an example of an open-ended question. How did you contact the Washington State Employee Assistance Program? Clarifying questions helps to remove ambiguity and elicits additional detail and guides the answer to a question. When you ask a clarifying question, you ask for explanation or expansion or even further detail, while withholding your judgment and your own opinions. When asking for further clarification, you will have to listen carefully to what the other person says. Frame your question at someone trying to understand in more detail. Often asking for a specific example is useful. This also helps the speaker evaluate their own opinions and perspective. For example, I can tell you are really concerned about this. Or let me see if I can repeat to you your main concerns so we can start to think about what to do in this situation and moving forward. That sort of thing. Closed questions usually require a one-word answer and effectively shut off discussion. Closed questions provide facts, allow the questioner to maintain control of the conversation, and are easy to answer. Typical leading words are is, can, how many, or does. While closed questions are not the optimum choice for active listening, at times they may be necessary to elicit facts. For example, who will lead the meeting? Do you know how to schedule a workplace consult with the Washington State Employee Assistance Program? Again, that sort of thing. Body language is a form of nonverbal communication involving the use of, say, stylized gestures, postures, and even physiological signs which act as cues to other people. As humans, we unconsciously send and receive nonverbal signals through body language all the time and is the single most powerful form of communication. Nonverbal communication cues others about what's on your mind and even more than your voice or words can do. According to studies at UCLA, as much as 93% of communication effectiveness is determined by nonverbal cues. And the impact of performance was determined 7% by the words used, 38% by voice quality, and 55% by nonverbal communication. So in communication, if a conflict arises between your words and your body language wins out every time. Another significant area to take a closer look at to improve upon assertiveness and confidence is through goal setting. A strong self-concept depends both upon what you do and your idea of yourself. Goal setting is the process that allows you to analyze and determine what you do. Goal setting helps you feel strong and in control. Goal setting drives us and gives us a measure for our successes. Setting goals provides an incentive and helps to push us into completing the goals we set. The process of setting goals helps to provide a clear picture of your wants and needs so you can chart your own life destiny. To get a clear picture of your wants and needs, consider taking the time to write out your goals in the following ways. For instance, immediate goals. For some of us, just getting to work on time is our most immediate and pressing goal. And medium-range goals. For example, a medium-range goal might look something like to schedule and attend all project meetings over the next few months. And finally, a long-range goal, which may look something like where you see a major workplace project through to completion within the next 5 years with no delays and without going over budget. The SMART method is a straightforward way to qualify and quantify each goal. SMART really is a convenient acronym for the set of criteria that a goal must have in order for it to be realized by the goal achiever. Let's take a closer look at this acronym. Specific. Success coach Jack Canfield states in his book, The Success Principles, that, quote, vague goals produce vague results, unquote. In order for you to achieve a goal, you must be very clear about what exactly you want, often creating a list of benefits that the accomplishment of your goal will bring to your life will give your mind a compelling reason to pursue that goal. Measurable. It's crucial for goal achievement that you are able to track your progress towards your goal, and that's why all goals need some form of objective measuring system so that you can stay on track and become motivated when you enjoy the sweet taste of quantifiable progress. Also, it needs to be achievable. Setting big goals is great, but setting unrealistic goals will just demotivate you. A good goal is one that challenges but is not so unrealistic that you have virtually no chance of accomplishing it. Also, it needs to be relevant. Before you even set goals, it's a good idea to sit down and define your core values and your life purpose, because it's these tools which ultimately decide how and what goals you choose for your life. Goals in and of themselves do not provide happiness. Goals that are in harmony with our life purpose do have the power to make us happy. And finally, timed. Without setting deadlines for your goals, you really have no real compelling reason or motivation to start working on them. By setting a deadline, your subconscious mind begins to work on that goal, occasionally both night and day, to bring you closer to achievement. Author Jerry Corsten once said, "Loving yourself starts with liking yourself, which starts with respecting yourself, which starts with thinking of yourself in positive ways." Being positive and feeling good about oneself really is the key. You must feel the part. Positivity is a leading factor in one's overall self-confidence. It will help you keep that feeling of worth. Staying positive will provide you a great asset in regards to self-talk and recognizing and working with your strengths. Everyone has weaknesses, and by being positive, you can learn to recognize those weaknesses and continue to work on them to lessen or to remove them altogether. Worth is defined as the level at which someone or something deserves to be valued or rated. People with a sense of self-worth tend to exude confidence in themselves. They feel in charge of their own destiny and are genuinely more satisfied in life. Positive self-talk allows you to recognize, validate, and apply your full potential with respect to all that you are and do. Also called affirmations or to make something firm, positive self-talk serves as your own personal accomplishment scale. Here are some tips for positive self-talk. Use the present tense. Deal with what exists today. Be positive rather than affirming what you don't want. Remain personal. Self-talk must relate to you and you only. Keep sentences short and simple. Go with your gut. If it clicks, then just say it. Self-talk should feel positive, organic, expanding, free, and supporting. And focus on new things. Rather than spending time and energy into those things we can no longer change. If self-talk is new to you, that's okay. It's a good idea to first think about the things that you're grateful for, such as I'm grateful to have someone in my life that cares about me, and consider identifying who that might be. If you don't have that certain someone in your life today, consider making a new connection. Also, I'm grateful for my downtime to do the things that I enjoy. I'm grateful for my pets, or otherwise called furry babies. I'm grateful for the role that I have in my family, either father, mother, brother, sister, aunt, uncle, grandparent. I'm grateful for my career, and I'm grateful that it's challenging. Another example would be when I learn something new, I can feel proud about that. Or I'm a good person that cares for others. And finally, I'm grateful just to be alive. Feeling and looking the part would not be complete without voice. Given that we know that 38% of communication effectiveness is governed by how we deliver our message, think of it this way. The way you start a conversation is generally how it ends. It's really how you say it. We are all born with a particular tone of voice which we can learn to use. The goal is to sound inviting, warm, under control, and clear. Here are some examples of how you might go about doing that. First of all, consider your posture. Posture affects breathing, and it also affects tone of voice, so be sure to sit or stand up straight. If you have a voice that is particularly high or low, try fluctuating your tone. And smile. Tone often follows facial expressions. Here's a few moments for you to try to say something with a smile on your face, and say it again without a smile on your face, and see if you can discern the difference. Okay, Were you able to discern the difference between when you said something with a smile on your face versus when you didn't have a smile on your face? I think you'll agree that there is a slight difference. These are just a few basic ways to say what you mean while using your own voice to invite others into the discussion. Since 38% of the messages received by a listener are governed by the tone and quality of your voice, its pitch, volume, and control all make a difference in how confident you sound when you communicate. And here are some specific tips. Consider pitch. Pitch means how high or low your voice is. Speak from your stomach, the location of your diaphragm. And consider your volume. The loudness of your voice must be governed by your diaphragm. Speak through your diaphragm and not your throat. Quality. The color, warmth, and meaning given to your voice contributes to that quality. Add emotion to your voice. Smile as much as possible when you're speaking. The need for assertive, confident communication can occur at any time, in virtually any place. So how do you make all this come together? Well, here are some practice suggestions. Start simply and gain some experience in safe environments, such as the grocery store with family or friends. Set aside time when you can read out loud without being disturbed and listen to yourself. Challenge yourself to speak with someone new every day. Set a realistic time frame to make the shift. Don't expect to change your speaking style overnight. And reducing anxiety. Often anxiety inhibits your ability to act and sound confident when speaking. Knowing how to perform a quick relaxation exercise can help diffuse anxiety and allow you to speak more confidently. An assertive, self-confident person uses a variety of coping techniques to deal with the challenges of interpersonal communication. Many of these techniques come from the School of Neuro-Linguistic Programming, otherwise known as NLP, which include things like building rapport, expressing disagreement, and coming to consensus. Let's take a closer look at these three important areas. You build rapport when you work to develop mutual trust, respect, or an appreciation with someone you work with or just someone you know. Rapport building is really about making a connection. Mirroring is more than simply parroting back what you believed you heard. It is a process of discovery through curiosity and listening to understand. In so doing, you not only create a shared meaning, but a shared understanding. When expressing disagreement, there really are three areas we want to pay special attention to: things we see, things we feel, and the things that we hear, or at least the things that we think we hear. Our ability to detect cues about how individuals process information will aid us in our ability to meet them where they are. For example, most of us are either visual, the things we see, auditory, the things we hear, or kinesthetic, the things that we feel, touch, taste, or smell. In a conversation, once we understand those conversational styles or personality or communication style differences, we can then learn to match with the other person's communication style, helping us to ensure more of our message and theirs is being fully received. So what does it mean to come to a consensus? Well, when there's a consensus, everyone agrees on something. If you're going to a movie with friends, you need to reach a consensus about which movie everyone wants to see. And whenever there's disagreement, well, by definition, you do not have a consensus. So why is it good to have a consensus? Well, first of all, it promotes making better decisions because all perspectives in the group are taken into account. The resulting proposals are therefore able to address all the concerns affecting the decision as much as possible. Secondly, it promotes better group dynamics and relationships. Through collaborating rather than competing, group members are able to build closer relationships through the process. Resentment and rivalry between winners and losers is minimized. And finally, better implementation of decisions. When widespread agreement is achieved and everyone has participated in the process, there is usually strong levels of cooperation and follow-through. There is a less likelihood of someone then trying to covertly undermine or passively sabotage effective implementation of the group's process. Then you want to decide how the group will finalize a decision. A consensus process allows a group to generate as much agreement as possible. Some groups require everyone to consent if a proposal is to be passed. Other groups, however, allow decisions to be finalized without unanimous consent. Often a supermajority is deemed sufficient. Some groups use a simple majority vote or the judgment of a leader. They can still use a consensus process to come up with their proposals regardless of how they finalize a decision. Then, of course, you want to summarize your agreements. You then want to implement decisions once all agreed party members are signing off and have bought into the agreements, and in some cases you can do that through majority rule. And finally, review and adjust as needed. Each of us can probably think of at least one challenging personality with whom we've had to deal with either at work or in our personal lives. And to deal with such a challenge, we innately try to apply our own coping filters, such as, well, for example, removing virtually all positive attributes about the other person, or defaming the other person, or simply we build consensus with others against that person. And in some cases, we might explain the person simply in negative terms. Anger also plays a big part. Feeling angry, we instinctively feel justified with our anger and then try to use anger as a vehicle to try to manage the situation. Instead, try to break the cycle of negativity, and here are some simple self-reflective questions you might consider to break that cycle of anger. First, what observable behaviors or statements did the other person perform or say? And then ask yourself, how might someone else interpret the same event? Would they view it in a positive way or perhaps in a negative way? And then ask the question of, what will you gain or lose by interpreting the challenging person's actions or words in a more positive light? And finally, how might that alter or change how you might respond to that other person? And what is stopping you from responding this way now? So, in wrapping up, let's review 3 key tactics that we've discussed earlier in this webinar. First and foremost, active listening, which is possibly the most important tactic that we can use in building on confidence and good communication. We want to learn to listen empathetically, which is essentially listening while trying to understand and not to simply respond. Secondly, we want to take notes after all discussions. This tactic allows us to recollect later on the discussion that took place. And notes can also be a huge support in your next communication attempt with the other person. And then finally, writing your communication out. Putting your thoughts into writing has some pretty important benefits. Agreements are less likely to be misinterpreted. It's easier to provide orderly communication in writing than in a discussion. And there is no body language to shape the outcome, reducing the possibility of mixed messages. And to remember, courage doesn't always have to roar. Sometimes courage is the quiet voice at the end of the day saying, "I will try again tomorrow." We thank you for attending today's webinar on confidence and communication, and we hope that you will take some of what you've learned here today and develop your own action plan in moving forward in a more positive way. This will be a key tool to guide your progress in the days, weeks, months, and years to come. We wish you the best of luck on the rest of your travels. And should you wish to learn more about your Washington Employee Assistance Program, please don't hesitate to contact us at your convenience. Again, we thank you for attending today's webinar.